And welcome back, everyone, to the second installment of NB8 right here on Wood TV Plus. Joined once again by AJ Evans. AJ, really appreciate you stopping by. You know, we had a very good first episode of this, and even just rewatching it and getting everything in place for the actual show, I could tell that this is going to be a very special season. I'm so glad to have you along my side for really so much NBA basketball that we're set to get going with.
Of course, Phil. Thank you for having me. That first episode was a lot of fun, man.
Yeah. Definitely. And, it was nice actually finally talking about ball. I feel like especially, we're excited about baseball season, football season, especially with the Lions, Tigers, the Whitecaps playing all really well. But there's something about basketball that just really gets me excited. Fall is the perfect time for it. So, again, we spent a little bit of time in that first episode talking about who we think are going to win some of the key NBA awards. But now we want to focus on the teams themselves and break down who we think are going to be making it into the playoffs, whether they're in the play-in or not. But we have our 1 through 8 for both the East and West. We want to begin with the West. And AJ, I'll let you go ahead first and just go over your top 8, and then I'll give my top 8, and then we'll kind of decide and look at a little bit further where we kind of agree and where we defer a little bit.
All right. Yeah. Well, I want to preface with saying that this was very difficult for me to feel. The West is loaded, and I really do think some of these teams are just going to ultimately eat each other alive, but nonetheless, I better get on with it. So first, I have the Oklahoma City Thunder finishing as a top seed. I think they're just going to be dominant, and I think they'll have another level of confidence, which is a scary thought for the rest of the league.
Right.
At 2, I have Minnesota. 3, I have Houston. 4, I have Denver. I think the additions that they made, along with their new head coach, is going to prove to be pivotal. Plus, with their already established pieces in place, I think the Lakers will come in at 5, the Warriors at 6. The Memphis Grizzlies at 7. That's for you, Phil.
Yeah, my Memphis Grizzlies.
And I have the Sacramento Kings in at 8. I think Doug Christie in his first full season as head coach is going to raise some eyebrows around the league, but in a good way. And I think this team, with DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine, and with Dennis Schroeder now as the floor general, is going to make some headway in the West. Yeah.
I mean, you hit it really on the head with before you even gave your list. The West is loaded. I think any of these teams, I mean, really almost 1 through 15, I could see a team making it into the playoffs, at least in the play-in, and then if you get to the play-in, you never really know. Real quick, want to just go over my list, then we can kind of go over where we agreed and where we disagreed. So I've got the Thunder at 1. We both agreed on that. We actually both agreed on our first 2 picks because I've got Minnesota at number 2 as well. Then things get a little bit interesting. I've got Denver at number 3. I think some of the additions that they made really work well with Jokic's game, because you look at when Denver was able to win the finals, this is kind of what they did. They focused on wings that can play defense and can shoot. Cam Johnson, Bruce Brown is back. I mean, I really like Denver and what they did this offseason. The Rockets in at 4. Again, a lot of new faces there in Houston. I've got them at 4. I've got Golden State at 5. Mavericks, the Dallas Mavericks in at 6. I've got the Los Angeles Clippers, and I know they've had kind of a tumultuous offseason, but again, you just look at that roster head to toe, one of the top rosters in the NBA. And then at 8, a surprise pick, and you kind of motivated me a little bit when we talked last week about Mitch Johnson potentially being coach of the year. I think the Spurs look really good. They made some really good offseason pieces. Still very young, but can totally see them coming in at that 8th seed.
For sure. I almost felt a little guilty because I was like, I'm kind of contradicting myself saying that Mitch Johnson could be a head coach of the year candidate, but at the same time, like I don't even have them making the playoffs. But at the end of the day, I tried to factor in health as much as I could. And that's usually tough for me, Phil, because I usually disregard health completely when I make predictions, and that never bodes well. It never does. So.
But I think it kind of had to with this. That was something I didn't do. I've got Dallas in as the 6th seed, but and you didn't have. I don't think you didn't have Dallas in your playoff seeding.
Oh,
again,
man.
I think on paper I didn't count in for injuries really, because I'm like, if Anthony Davis, which again he's missed a lot of time, we all know that that if he can manage to play most of the games, Kyrie Irving can come back. You're looking at Cooper Flag as your 3rd option, possibly even 4th. Maybe if you've got some of these other guys, with a hot hand, PJ Washington, for example. I mean, you're looking at a really stacked Dallas Mavericks team, and I might even be underselling them at 6. Again, you didn't have them in your playoff seeding. Was injuries kind of the big deal with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was injuries. I think Kyrie's ACL injury, you never know how long an ACL injury may take. Yeah,
Right.
I think one of the first things that we saw with Derrick Rose was that doctors deemed him ready to play, but he didn't feel that he was ready. And that led to some discourse, obviously, within the Bulls organization. And obviously that was over a decade ago, but still, I think the timetable is they're ruled out for an entire season. But if Kyrie can come back, like you mentioned before we started today, like, that could be a pivotal difference for them. But I think one thing that also, too, I think I underestimated was the fact that D'Angelo Russell is a new signee for this team, and he will be available and should be ready to go at the start of this season. I don't think he has any impending injuries or anything like that. So, I mean, he could also play a pivotal role in keeping them afloat until Kyrie gets back.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I am optimistic about them, and obviously, too, they're going to be well coached. I think Jason Kidd is one of my favorite head coaches in the league. So, there's a lot to like. I just, like I said, the health thing. Anthony Davis's health has deeply concerned me. I felt like I always overlooked that when he was in LA, and it always came back to haunt me. And so if he gets hurt, I think this is a team that could be at the bottom of the Western Conference if he's hurt and Flag is out there trying to fend for himself.
Absolutely. So. I think that is kind of the thing you have to, that maybe I probably should have looked at a little bit before we got started, because if Cooper Flag, if something were to happen to Anthony Davis, you're probably looking at Cooper Flag being the face and the only guy on that team running that offense for probably a good 1 or 2 months, depending on what happens injury wise. And that could be the end of the Mavericks season, honestly, if they go on like a pretty long losing streak, no matter even if at the end of the year, last couple of games they are fully healthy, it might be too late for them, honestly.
Yeah, and Kidd has already indicated that the ball is going to be in Flag's hands a lot. Like, he's even kind of flirted with the idea of him playing point guard, exclusively. So that's going to be really cool. I'm excited to see it, but I really do hope that they can stay healthy, and I hope I'm wrong, because I would love to see this team in the postseason. I really would.
Absolutely. One thing I do want to spend some time on, and I would be remiss if we didn't talk about it a little bit. Yeah. I did not have the Los Angeles Lakers making the playoffs, and you had them at the 5th seed. Where do you think this discrepancy is really coming from between the two of us? Because, again, Lakers roster, they've got arguably the two faces of the league right now with LeBron James and Luka Doncic. But there's just something about the way the team operates and just some of the pieces. I don't know how they're all going to mesh well together. And I really just kind of seeing what happened last year with them, I just feel like there are too many other teams that made bigger strides and are just going to be a little bit more put together. I don't know how you agree with that. I mean, clearly you don't. You got them as the 5th seed. But why do you have the Lakers so high? I guess maybe try and change my mind a little bit.
Well, I think the biggest thing for me is that at the end of the day, I think the LA Lakers are going to have the 2 best players on the floor every night. I really do. Almost every night. I really do believe that. And I think this is probably going to be the best version that we will see of Luka Doncic that we've seen in his career so far. He seems to be in phenomenal shape. I think he's more motivated than ever. He has an extension, so I think he's more than ready to go. And I think he understands his responsibility as the face of the Lakers franchise and what that means. And like I said, he still has LeBron. Right next to him. So I think that, to me, is conducive to a lot of regular season success. I don't think it's conducive to postseason success. I worry about that. Just having 2 guys being that top heavy can make things a little difficult. But you also got to factor in the fact that they have Austin Reeves still, and he's going to be tremendous. He's been great in that 3rd role. So also too, they're obviously well coached. there are just a lot of different factors that I like, and I think the addition of Ayton is going to be a pivotal difference for them as well. So I don't know, Phil. I really like this team. I've always been big on LeBron. I think LeBron just has always pulled teams above where their ceiling was, especially in the regular season. Obviously, in the postseason, things happened. You can't expect somebody to drag you to the conference finals, whatever year it is, but I do think this team will just win a lot of games in the regular season off of talent alone, and simply just, like I said, having the 2 best guys on the floor every single night. And not to mention, both of these guys, too, are, I think, 2 of the top 5 greatest facilitators in the world right now when it comes to basketball. They make everybody else around them better. These are not just 2 exclusive scorers who need the ball in their hands and need to take 30 shots a night. Neither of those guys are like that. Doncic and LeBron are both triple-double threats on a nightly basis.
Absolutely.
So I think they're going to win a lot of games and just climb the ranks as far as the Western Conference standings go in the regular season.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned that Ayton signing, and that is obviously key because they need that rim protector, at least another big to maybe play alongside LeBron, and he doesn't have to play center maybe as much. But another signing, Marcus Smart, I really did like that for the Lakers because they did need perimeter defense. I mean, we know Luka is an offensive wizard, but kind of struggles on the defensive end. If he's playing next to Marcus Smart, I mean, maybe I mistook the West. Maybe I do need to put the Lakers in there. But
what's your biggest concern, or what was the biggest thing that drew you away from?
Again, I think it is just a wait and see type of thing. I know we're all seeing Luka dominate in EuroLeague right now, and we've seen the photos, and he's lost a lot of weight. He looks slimmer and more conditioned. But I've seen it before, and it's going to be, is he really making that transition to being a full-time athlete and not just a part-time basketball player? So I'm curious to see if he's actually going to be able to continue that. LeBron, he's the only person I've ever known to beat Father Time, and he keeps doing it. But is this the year now that maybe he does start to slow down a bit? Maybe he does miss a few games. And then, again, the new pieces, great on paper. Are they going to mesh well? Are they going to fit into the offense? Are they going to help out on the defensive side of the things? And, again, I think J.J. Redick's going to do a good job. And the more I keep talking about it, the more I'm like, I probably should have put some in. But, I just couldn't put anybody in. I couldn't put the Lakers in over any of these other teams. Again, the Dallas one maybe is the only option just because of injuries. But other than that, I really like the Clippers. I really like the Spurs. And then Warriors, Rockets, Nuggets, Timberwolves, Thunder, all, in my opinion, even with the changes, are still better than the Lakers.
Yeah. I mean, I do understand. I didn't have the Clippers in there, but I think they just have so much going on right now as a franchise.
I mean, there's a very good chance that we might not see some of these top guys play at all.
Yeah. I don't know what's going on there, and as a result, I did not. I had them in my standings as of this morning, and then I took them out. I didn't feel confident. I did not feel confident. It says a lot if I'm, with all due respect, it says a lot if I'm putting the Kings, a team on paper that should not even be in the same atmosphere as the Clippers above them. But I really do think that things will not bode well for them this season, ultimately.
Well, I think we both touched on it, that the West is stacked. I think any of these teams that we picked have a very good shot. At the very least, they'll be in the play-in. And that's what I'm most excited about, is I think even those play-in matchups, I think in the West specifically, are going to be really great. You might even have, like I said, my Grizzlies, I didn't have them in the playoffs, but them in the play-in, I mean, you probably don't want to face off.
What happened, Phil?
It's just, they didn't make enough moves, I think, in the offseason. Just being around Grizzlies fans, they talk a lot about some of the moves. I really like the Ty Jerome deal, and getting Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is really good, but you lost Desmond Bane. You still did not address the center position. Zach Edey is probably going to miss that first month of the season. Jaren Jackson Jr. is dealing with injuries. Brandon Clark is dealing with injuries. John Morant is now dealing with injuries. And the past 2 seasons injuries have plagued the Grizzlies. I'm still not very confident that, not so much that they're going to be injured a lot, but more so that they're not going to get the consistency with everybody. The starting court, those 5 players that they're relying to start, I don't think they're going to get a whole lot of time to gel during the season, and that's what I'm worried about. Plus, I couldn't seem like too much of a homer, right? I couldn't just put the Grizzlies at the number 1 seed, even though that's probably what I'd like to do. But
I see. No, that's completely reasonable, though. Health is a big thing, and you have to take it into the equation, especially if a team has been decimated by injuries over the last few years. It's more likely than not that things will repeat themselves.
Absolutely. All right, well, let's focus now on the East. Let's move on to the Eastern standings and who we think are going to be making the playoffs in the East. AJ, why don't you take it away and go through 1 through 8 just again?
Yeah, so this was a little more definitive for me, Phil.
A little bit more.
I had some trouble I was really wrestling with these Western Conference teams, but the East I feel a little more strongly about. So I got the Knicks in at the 1st seed. I got the Cavs in at 2. I have the Pistons as the 3rd seed in the Eastern Conference. I have the Magic in at 4, the Atlanta Hawks in at 5, the Celtics in at 6, the Pacers in at 7, and I have the 76ers in at 8.
All right, awesome. Yeah, no, again, a really solid list, and kind of what you were saying, I agree. It was a little bit easier to plan out these 8 teams. Maybe we deferred a little bit on sort of the placing, and we really only had one team kind of swap, who we thought was going to be in and who we didn't. I'm going to go over mine really quick just for everybody. I've got the Knicks at number 1 and the Cavs at number 2, so we agree there. We flip-flop 3 and 4 again. I've got the Magic in at 3 and the Detroit Pistons in at 4. Then I kind of have the bottom half is a little bit different. You know, I've got the 76ers in at 5. Again, I know I equated injuries a little bit to the Grizzlies, but again, I'm trying not to do that. And the Sixers, I think, still on paper. You got VJ Edgecombe now alongside Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, again, still a star. And you've got some pieces. I mean, Paul George is still on the team, and he can give you great games here and there during the regular season. For sure. Then I've got Atlanta. I really like the moves that they made in the offseason to help Trae Young out a little bit. Got the Bucks in at 7. Don't think you can really go against Giannis too often. And then at number 8, I've got the Indiana Pacers. I think they're just going to keep kind of up that momentum. I know they're missing Miles Turner now. Tyrese Halliburton is probably going to be out for the entire season. But again, you still have some really nice pieces. I really like Pascal Siakam. They made a couple of moves in the offseason. And then you still have Andrew Nembhard, who I think is going to be great. And Aaron Nesmith, who I also thought had a great playoff run. And again, I think just they're going to ride that momentum as long as they can.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think the Indiana Pacers they're still a very good team.
Absolutely. And Rick Carlisle, you know, if he's your coach, you've got a chance.
Yeah. They're still a very good team. There's still a lot to like in Indiana, and this team has proven that they're more than capable of, you know, going extended periods without Halliburton. Now, I'm not optimistic about what could happen in the postseason, but I do think they will make the playoffs still. I have a lot of faith in what they're going to be able to do. But yeah, no, I like your list as well, man. So you have the Sixers at 5. I do want to talk with you though first. Yeah. You have the Magic, and we have Magic and the Pistons swapped. What do you see happening in Orlando this year?
You kind of motivated me a little bit by bringing up Jamal Mosley. I do think he is a really solid coach there for Orlando. And then again, they were missing that knockdown three-point shooter. That's what they got. You know, they gave up KCP. They lost Cole Anthony. They lost a couple of draft picks. But this is for this year. You know, you don't know what Paolo Banchero is thinking, kind of seeing how these first couple of years have gone. You've got a ton of young talent. You bring in another young-ish guy in Desmond Bane who does have playoff experience. For sure. I really like that move, and I think just this is going to be a fun team to watch. And again, the East is wide open right now because you've got Boston, who I didn't even have making the playoffs. They're dealing with a ton of injuries, and they've moved out a bunch of different pieces. They added Anthony Simons, which I really did like. But again, no Jason Tatum through the year. They lost Al Horford to Golden State. I don't really know what that's going to be. I feel like Boston is kind of moving into potentially just maybe taking a seat back and just maybe giving some other guys a chances there. So again, that's how I kind of viewed the East. And the Pistons would not be surprised, truly, if they were the number 1 seed. I really liked everything that they've done so far. J.B. Bickerstaff was my pick for Coach of the Year. I like the Thompson, Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey's coming back. The front court with Jalen Duren. Yeah, I love Jalen Duren so much. Isaiah Stewart. So again, would not be surprised if Detroit is the one team on this list that I feel like I am underselling just a little bit. But I just really like. I'm glad we both agreed on New York being the number 1 seed because I am fully in love with what the Knicks are doing. But again, I would not be surprised if the Pistons were challenging them a little bit.
No, for sure. I think my reasoning, at least personally, for putting the Knicks at 1 is I think they are fully aware of the moment. Yes. Like, New York is a very pressure cooker franchise. This is it. This is their best chance to go out and win a title this year. There's no telling what can and will happen in the nearest future. I mean, just for context, I mean, ESPN just posted an article the other day about how Giannis during the offseason considered the Knicks as a possibility. So there's no telling what that roster will look like as of next season, but this team has more than enough to compete. I think they will seize the moment for sure. But yeah, I'm super optimistic about the Pistons. They obviously took a step last year, and I think they're fully aware of how good they can be. And I think last night was an indication of that in their victory against the Grizzlies. They looked so aggressive. Cade Cunningham looks like he's taking another leap. Jaden Ivey looks strong. He looks athletic. He looks like he's back to his usual self. I'm sure the rust is going to be there. He's going to just have to learn to play through it. But yeah, I'm super optimistic about everything. And I really do like the additions that they made as well. I think getting Duncan Robinson is going to be huge. As well as Karis LeVert. Absolutely. I think he's
2 Michigan boys back in town.
Yeah. And I know they're happy to be back here. But I think those guys are just going to provide major dividends, especially towards the end of the year, headed into the postseason. I think they'll really make some noise because both of those guys are experienced and they've been around for a long time. But yeah, the East is going to be fun.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be as competitive as the West, but there's a lot to like, and there are a lot of different cool, like, evolving storylines that are going to be happening. I know we were a little different on the Sixers. I love Philly. I think Embiid is the best big man in the league when he's healthy, but his health has not been a guarantee for quite some time now, and neither has Paul George's, and I'm really worried. Both of those guys are going to start the season on the bench in street clothes. Tyrese Maxey is going to be once again trying to spearhead something there, and I'm optimistic about VJ Edgecombe. I think he's great, but like I told you, Phil, before we got started today, I never place too many expectations on rookies just because you don't know what to expect, and at some point they are going to struggle, and so I'm really excited to see what they do, though. And like I said, I hope I'm wrong, and I really do want to see them do well ultimately. I have them in at 8, but I would like to see them finish a little bit higher. But like you said, I think Atlanta may have had the best offseason.
Oh, yes.
I think so. Like, they have a team that is not only primed to make some noise in the regular season, but a team that could really do some damage in the playoffs.
Right. No, I mean, Kristaps Porzingis, Luke Kennard, and then Nickeil Alexander-Walker that's just like the first part of the offseason moves that they made. So I'm really liking Atlanta. Again, would not be surprised if maybe they even pushed it further in the playoffs. Again, Philadelphia, while I do have them as the 5th seed, I still don't trust them in the playoffs, but that's a discussion for another day, I'm sure. But again, that's kind of how we viewed it. You didn't have the Bucks in there. The only difference we had as far as teams go is that you had the Celtics and I had the Bucks. Why not? We talked a little bit about why not Boston, but why not Milwaukee?
It is for one simple reason. I am deeply concerned with the supporting cast around Giannis Antetokounmpo. I don't know who is going to be there every night outside of him. I don't know who can you rely on to do what and when. Like, it takes 4 quarters to win a game consistently, and I'm just not sure. Also, too, Giannis is a very distinct type of superstar, and he commands so much attention. He's one of those heliocentric guys. All eyes are on him on both ends of the floor. He can control a game through and through, but on offense, he needs shooters, he needs spacing, and he needs options. He needs weapons around him for this Bucks team to be successful. This is the first time in a long time we haven't seen Giannis, I think, without a true, like, secondary designated star. And I really am concerned. I think Doc Rivers is going to continue to do what he does, and I think he's a solid coach, so I think that'll help make up for some of those things. And obviously, Giannis is good enough to probably drag this team to the postseason, in complete honesty. But I just have concerns about, like I said, who his supporting cast is going to be on a nightly basis. And if the rest of these teams are at full strength, I see them above the Bucks right now. And like I said about the Clippers in the Western Conference, I do hope I'm wrong. I love Giannis, and he's been so terrific. And I would hate to see a year in his prime go to waste.
Absolutely.
I always say the worst thing a franchise can do to a player is throw away their prime. And even if it's just 1 or 2 years, I would hate to see that, but I'm not optimistic about what's going on in Milwaukee right now.
Yeah, I think the big thing for me was kind of, do you think Miles Turner was that big of an upgrade from Brook Lopez? And personally, I did. I think at the very least, like you said, Giannis is able to carry this team at least to the play-in all on his own. You added Miles Turner. I think they do just enough to get into that 7th seed there.
For sure.
All right, awesome. Well, again, we don't want to give away who we are picking to win the finals just yet. That is going to be in next week's episode. But we do want to go ahead and give away who we think are going to be making the conference finals. AJ, let's start with the West now. Who do you have coming out of the West in that conference final?
In the conference finals of this season, I have the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Denver Nuggets facing off against one another.
Yeah. Why not Oklahoma City? I think that is going to be the big question out of this, is the fact that Oklahoma dominated all throughout the playoffs. They had to go 7 games in the finals, but dominated throughout the playoffs, have the reigning MVP, have one of the best total rosters in the league right now. I mean, why not Oklahoma City?
It would have been easy for me to say that, and maybe I should have, but Phil, we talked about it. I really like what Denver did in the offseason, and I think this Nuggets team is motivated. I think they got a taste of what it was like to win one, and I think they want to go win another. Like, similar to the Knicks, I think they're well aware that this is their moment. You know, this is their era in which if they want to go out and get a ring, the option is there. They're one of the few teams in this league that has a legitimate shot of winning a title. But I think, like you said, Jokic thrives with shooters around him. I think Jamal Murray is going to be back to his usual self. Last year was a little bit shaky for him. I know he struggled through parts of the season, but I have full confidence that he will be back better than ever. But I really like what Denver did in the offseason, and we've seen it before. We've seen this team succeed before. We know what they're capable of, and we know what Jokic looks like once he has shooters around him and guys that he trusts. And we also know what Murray looks like in that kind of scenario as well. And then as far as Minnesota, I think it's Anthony Edwards' year. I really do. I think he is going to lift this team to new heights. But I also think that the rest of these guys are more than comfortable around him. And I think this team knows what it takes. They've been to the Western Conference Finals now 2 years in a row. I got them going back for a third. I think they'll do it.
Yeah. We'll hold off on picking a winner just yet, but we did agree. I do have Denver in the Western Conference Finals as well, but I just found it too difficult to pick against Oklahoma City. Yeah. I've got Oklahoma City versus Denver in the Western Conference Finals. I also was kind of just basing it off the matchups, who I think is going to actually win based off who I had right now. So I think Oklahoma City would beat San Antonio. Then they would probably take on the winner between the Rockets and the Warriors. And I think the Warriors would probably get out of that series, but I don't think they match up well enough against Oklahoma City. So I had them there. Nuggets, kind of the same thing. You know, they'd be taking on the Mavericks at first. Again, don't really know what the Mavericks are going to be there. But even if both teams were fully healthy, who's going to stop Jokic? You know, Anthony Davis probably does as good of a job as anybody to stop him. But I think at that point, the offense is going to be working too well. Jokic is going to be able to do anything. I mean, even in that series, that Western Conference Finals, when Denver won the finals, you know, they had to take on the Lakers, and Anthony Davis just could not stop him. Jokic was banking in shots. You know, it was just really difficult to stop him. I think we're in due for that again. And then, they would take on, after that, they would take on the Timberwolves probably. I really like Denver. I think just based off what they are capable of doing. I mean, that starting five for Denver is just looking scarier and scarier the more we keep thinking about it.
It is. It really is. And I think one thing that makes me optimistic about Denver is when this team is playing really well, especially in the postseason, their possessions are so good. Right. They really break teams down.
There really isn't a bad shot.
Yeah, especially on offense. And that is vital. That's not really something you see through the postseason. There are a lot of teams that are excellent and in different categories. You know, like the Rockets will rebound well. I expect that to be another trend this year. But the Nuggets really grind other teams down offensively. They make you work for everything. And one failed rotation, one missed assignment, if you're one step slow, you're going to pay for it.
Absolutely. All right, well, let's move on to the East now. AJ, were you able to maybe convince yourself to put the Pistons in the Eastern Conference Finals, or who do you have coming out of the East this year?
I wanted to. I really did. I wanted to put Detroit there, but I think the Pistons are just a year away. You know, there are steps to success, and it would behoove me to say that they could skip those steps. I didn't see the Thunder skip those steps. But having said that, I still have them in the postseason, like I said. I actually have them finishing above a team that I picked. I have the Knicks and the Orlando Magic.
Wow. Now that's a series.
Finals. Yeah. I really like the idea of it. The more I thought about it, the more I began to warm up to it. I think the Magic are a year ahead of the Pistons in terms of their rebuild. And some people would say, well, how does that make sense? But to me, I think Orlando, I don't want to say that they took a step back last year because they were kind of decimated by injuries, but I think they are fully aware at this point of how good they can be. They've matched up against the Celtics in the postseason. They've been there. They've lost before. They've had big years. I think now they're well aware of their potential, and they're ready to make good on it. And I think they'll not only do that in the regular season, but I think in the postseason when they get there, it'll be, okay, we've been here before. When you faced off against a Jason Tatum-led Celtics team, and when you've competed and lost, I think you're ready to see anyone in the East. And with the talent that this team has, coupled with, like you said, the addition of Desmond Bane, I think they're going to be more than ready for anything that comes their way. And I have them in the Eastern Conference Finals. I think it's their time, and I think they're ready for it.
Yeah, I think that'll be an awesome series. And, you know, I kind of, we still have a little bit of time left, I do want to make my pick right now. And again, I kind of focused on what do I want to see in this Eastern Conference Finals, and what better matchup to potentially make it to the finals than the New York Knicks versus the Atlanta Hawks. I think Trae Young back in Madison Square Garden, that's going to be primetime television. Yeah. Again, I really liked what they did in the offseason, and that's a matchup. I think you look at 1 through 5, I think that is a prime matchup. I know you got the 2 offensive forward guards in Trae Young and Jalen Brunson, but they're kind of smaller guards. They're going to be guarding each other probably, or at least helping out and being kind of the focal point in the ways that teams are trying to go at those defenses. So again, I think just top to bottom, 1 through 5, that is going to be an awesome series. So that's who I've got. We'll be sure to give our predictions on who's actually making the finals next week. But we do want to thank everybody so much for tuning into this latest edition of NB8